Hello, everyone. Welcome to Season 3 of Design Together, a podcast exploring how designers work together. I am your host, Abby Ryan Guido, a designer and educator working in Philadelphia, collaborating everywhere. All right, welcome, everyone. So I know I've been totally guilty of saying this before. I often start and say we have a great show today, but we really do have an amazing show today. We have part of the leadership team from Handsome. And if you're not familiar with Handsome's work, please hit pause, pull up your browser, and go ahead and visit handsome.is. It's handsome.is. And I know for sure you're going to recognize some of their stellar work. It's amazing. And I'm just really excited to dive in. So who we have here today, we have the CEO. John, I didn't even ask you prior to the show because I have not asked you how to pronounce your last name correctly. So I'm going to do it on the show. Can you let us know so I say it correctly?
John Roescher.
All right, Roescher it is. All right, we have the COO, Jennifer Allen, and the CCO, who is new to Handsome. And I'm really excited because when I met with John before, he was hinting at it. So I can't wait to hear all of the big plans you all have now. So we have Pablo Marques is here as well. So I thought we could get started. John, can you just give us a little bit of the history of Handsome, how it got started, and kind of take us to today, and then we can bring everyone in and hear about all the exciting changes.
Sure. So Handsome is about 10 years old as a company and a business. So the idea started about 10 years ago to start an agency or design firm to work with companies on designing experiences. And our backgrounds and the most prevalent platforms and contexts of the time were digital. This was right around when mobile started to become a thing, a few years after it started, and the web was in full speed. And so we started an agency to create experiences in digital environments, but also to think of them in the way we work with clients holistically. And so we developed capabilities and an approach that would look across all touch points and moments in a customer's journey, but also an employee's or a service member's journey or a partner's journey, and design from the brand through to each of those micro touch points and every moment in between. As a business and a team, we've actually had maybe 4 or 5 different evolutions and versions and phases of the company. And so without going through each of them, I will say that we're now looking at launching into the next phase and the next major era of Handsome as an idea. And those core ideas that I described before are going to remain true, but the way that we do them, the way that we deploy them, from how we build a team to how we do the work we do to even how we work with companies and other people out there, is going to evolve and change. And it's a great time to be talking to us.
Awesome. So you mentioned there's been different times where you've grown and kind of changed structure, changed how things work. And I think this is pretty, typical of just companies in general, but also in new companies, growing pains and figuring things out. What kind of happened at those moments when you realized, maybe something's not working and we have to rethink how things are structured?
There's been a few different things that have caused that, or that are, that fall into that territory. One that keeps coming up is the way the world changes, both from a technology perspective to the way businesses change, pandemics happen, and looking at how as a creative company that cares about and wants to perfect our ability to create experiences and to affect the human experience, the context changes, our tools change, and the way that businesses need to work with creative companies change. And so things like that have always been the main catalyst for us changing and evolving the way that we think. So, that plays out into expanding service offerings and capabilities. I mentioned that we think about things holistically in terms of how we work and how we think about customer experience or user experience. And, convenient for us, I guess, as a services company, holistic also kind of means everything. So there's always opportunity for us to be looking at what part of that whole picture or whole system should we be affecting that we aren't today, and how do we expand our capabilities, at least our insight, if not also capabilities to build and affect different parts of that ecosystem. So that's also been one of the ways that we've evolved and changed. So both looking at changes in technology, changes in what people, humans, consumers, people need or expect, what's going on in their world, and then also changes in the way that clients and organizations need to work with creative companies. So changes in that space, and then also our ability to work across different components and different parts of the whole system that is a brand, a business, and a product.
Can you talk a little about prior to bringing Jennifer on, kind of where were you at as a company, and what was the driving factor into bringing her on and rethinking this kind of structure again?
Well, there was a lot. So I could, without going through the laundry list of things that Jennifer has dismantled and also put together and invented for us. I think one of the insights that I had that led up to making that change was I guess how negatively affected we were by being in a bubble. And that is geographically, we're in Austin, and the double-edged sword of Austin is that it's a wonderful place. It's got great culture and quality of life and ideas and great talent. But it is a small place, and it's very far from New York. It's very far from San Francisco or LA, the West Coast. And so it's very easy to fall into a bubble here. And we did. We were in an office in Austin, and the only people that were outside of our network in this small geographical bubble were people that we could find and convince to move to Austin, and that was a difficult thing. So,
what time are we talking about, just so we can get a sense? This is pre-pandemic.
This is pre-pandemic, yeah, mid 2019.
Okay.
Is when during 2019 is when we started thinking about this idea of this revelation of we're in a bubble, and if we're going to get the best work, affect the most change, work with the best clients, and bring in the best talent. To do so, we're going to have to get outside of Austin. We're going to have to get outside of our comfort zone of our own network. And we're going to have to look and think like other agencies who are in different spaces, who are in different sizes or working on different things. And so that is one of the biggest things that led to looking for a person like Jennifer. And then specifically in my conversations with Jennifer over a few months, that this was a right fit and that we could partner on creating the next evolution and phase of Handsome and this idea.
Well, Jennifer, I think it's a great time for you to join the conversation. I'm curious, in this beginning conversation phase, what was it that attracted you to joining the team at Handsome?
I mean, there was so much opportunity, to join Handsome at the phase that they were at. Still quite small, but not starting from scratch. But I was really intrigued by the opportunity to come and build something new, like a new model for an agency, something that, John and I could create together, using, this foundation that he and the other partners had already built. And, in my heart of hearts, I'm a creative person. I'm a strategic thinking person. But I also do love operations because it's the way that you create the environment and the structure to allow that creativity and that great thinking. So I was always, really wanting to create something new. Like I said, new type of agency that really would facilitate much more that creativity. I think there's always, in any organization, but particularly in my experience with agencies, there's this tension between operations really trying to make things process rigid, and you need to for business. But there's that tension between how much process and rigidity and structure can you have without taking away from the creativity and the ability for your team to innovate and do new things. So I love sitting at the crux of that and figuring out with Pablo and John and the rest of the team, how we can have just enough structure to keep our business really strong and healthy, but then also allow for as much creativity and innovation and new thinking as possible. So, John's been a great partner on that in the past 2 years, in 2.5 actually, to be able to reinvent ourselves, and now we're going to get to reinvent ourselves even more with Pablo joining.
That's really exciting. Okay, so when you came on, how long did it take you to kind of dive into the structure and to kind of see how things operate to get to a place where you felt like, okay, I have some ideas, I've seen it. I'm always interested to hear how that kind of onboarding goes, and especially in a position that you have where you have to see everything.
Yeah, like 2 days. No, I mean, it's, that's sort of a joke. But yeah, I mean, I think, the company was small enough at the time that, it didn't take long to get in there. And I think the bigger challenge for me was to figure out what to do, and how to do that, so I think there was, so much change that I wanted to make and so much opportunity that I felt, that we could develop. It was really a matter of like, okay, how much change can we naturally handle as an organization without breaking? So I think that was my initial, sort of 6 months. And then actually the pandemic and early pandemic, when, there was a lot of fear around what was going to happen in the business, and a lot of clients were sort of pulling back on budgets. And that was actually a great, catalyst for us to actually be able to say, okay, here's a great reason why we are going to, get to our core and make all the changes that we want to happen right now. So it was a scary time, but it was also, it was a great time, because it, like I said, it allowed us to make a huge amount of change quickly that we weren't on track to do. To be honest, we were trying to be a little bit more, just healthy and careful of people, making sure that we didn't break things in the process of making big change. But the pandemic allowed us to be more radical, which I love.
Can you talk about that a little more? Because I know, John had shared with me beforehand a little bit of the structure now, or maybe not structure. I don't know what the right word is. I'll let you all fill that in. But can you talk a little about that kind of really big change to how folks work?
So, yeah, I think the biggest structural change that we made at that time, and we're going to be evolving on top of that structural change, but what we're in the middle of right now is a bit of a flat structure. So hierarchically, having people join us who are as senior as we can get them, and have them be the type of people who are so passionate about their work that they want to have high level perspective and high level ability to drive work and lead clients and participate in the direction of the agency, as well as be very, in the weeds, if you will, like down in the work, because they just enjoy that so much. So I think, we've been really successful with that so far, bringing in those people who are very self-managing, autonomous, but at the same time very collaborative and supporting of each other, rolling up their sleeves and getting the work done, as well as, again, like leveling up and being able to see the bigger picture when that's needed. And as we scale and grow, coming up on this year and in the next few, we'll be building on that mindset and keeping that mindset with people, but continuing to evolve that structure.
And when you were planning for this, and it was before the pandemic, was the thought still to try to attract these more senior level folks to move to Austin, or had you already all started talking a little bit about, will we have remote locations, or will we be working from home?
Yeah, I think I don't know if we talked about it explicitly, but in my mind, and I think with John too, that we were thinking about not not limiting ourselves to Austin, basically, and figuring out ways that we could, bring in talent from everywhere. But you're right that at that time, our eyes were not open to the potential that we have now. And so it was a little bit more like, well, do we have some kind of office elsewhere? And what could that mean? And what types of investment would that involve? But I think we were starting with, let's start with the people and see the people that we want to bring in, and then see where they are in the world and how we want to make that happen operationally. I like working that way, is instead of starting with the operational, like figure out, okay, what do we want to do? And then solve that problem operationally, like afterwards.
It's its own design challenge to figure out, you know who you need, and then you figure out how to make it all kind of work together.
Exactly. And it applies to also the job description itself. We can think about, carving out a role that we want, whether that's, in the organization or for a particular client. But then I've always found that as you're searching for those people, for that talent, you're going to find really interesting people who don't necessarily fit into that mold. And to me, that's a huge opportunity and very exciting, to find those really interesting, talented people and then say, they're not exactly what I had envisioned, but that's great. I'm going to see how they can fit with us anyway. And I found that a lot of people that we've been able to bring in have been, they chafe at different agencies that are too, you need to fit this mold. And that's not allowing them to be as creative and bring as much to bear on the work as they could be.
So how do you kind of strike that balance? I'm thinking of my type A personality, and I have this job description. This is the person that I know we need. Someone else comes along and they are not that person, but I fall in love with them and I'm like, we need them. How do you kind of balance behind like having these plans and then being thrown these curveballs, but knowing that it's a good curveball and making it work?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, it's like you said, it's a balance. It's an art, rather than a science. It's really trusting your gut that, this person I'm falling in love with, because they're smart, they're interesting, they're going to bring something new. And I think it's also about, respecting the, respecting the universe, but no, respecting the things that you can't plan for allow you to be different than what you expected. And that's what's behind sort of the need for diversity, the need for different perspectives. If you go into it knowing that the point is to find things that you're not already thinking about, the point is to see things in a different way that you haven't seen them before. That's what it's about. So you're going to embrace those opportunities where something is different than what you had expected, instead of seeing that as a bad thing or a challenge or, a tension. You get excited about that.
So I don't know if John wants to field this, or Jennifer, if you'd like to, but I'd love to hear kind of how Pablo came into this mix, and was there a search looking for exactly Pablo, or was he someone who came along and you were like, we have to figure out how to get him here? Do
you want to take it, John?
Sure. So like I mentioned, the ever evolving and handsome, and thinking of at each, we find these moments where we think it's most appropriate to make a big evolution. And in that moment that we have been in the last 6 months or so, we've been looking at the way the world is changing. We've been looking at the momentum that we have, the kinds of things that our clients are asking us to start thinking about, and just the place that the business is in, and wanting to be more than what we were before. And so in looking for someone to come and be a partner at the very top of the agency, to think about how do we evolve to be more than just a design services for hire business, be more of an ideas and a strategic problem-solving business with really strong creative capabilities that can work and evolve and create things in whatever new medium or platform or problem or challenge that comes forward. And so it was pretty clear that we needed someone that had that shared that same perspective, and that had the hunger and drive to be almost essentially founding a new agency from scratch. And so that's what led to looking for people in general. And then, kind of to Jennifer's whole previous point, we had no idea what we would find. We had no idea that we'd find Pablo.
Awesome. So, Pablo, maybe this is a good time for you to jump in. I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about some of those first conversations and what you were thinking about.
I've been doing this agency thing for a while now, and to be fair, I wasn't looking to stay in the agency world, for a while. In my head, my plans were different, of what I wanted to do. I'm kind of been working in agencies for some time within holding companies, which is where most agencies are. They get acquired so quickly these days. And so, and holding companies have plans for you. You have plans for yourself, but they have plans for you, and they need you to fit within a certain ecosystem they have created, rightfully or wrongfully. They're big businesses that function well. But they have a portfolio of agencies, and so every agency needs to perform a role within that portfolio, which means you get pigeonholed quickly, as a business. And that could be a good thing if you're pigeonholed in a place where you want to be, but that could be a bad thing if you want to do other things, And so I just think creativity is such an expensive sort of field that nowadays can be applied to so many things. That sometimes agencies limit themselves as to what they can do, and what they can apply their skills to. And so that was pushing me out of the agency world a little bit, because I was kind of tired of the limitations sometimes, and of what we could do. Or a client comes for you because they want that kind of work, and you can't really push yourself outside of that kind of work, which would actually be helpful for them if you did, And so I wasn't looking to stay in agencies. I was probably looking to go sort of in-house somewhere, and which has its own sort of tensions, because you go in-house and then you're only thinking about one problem forever, and I thinking one thing at agencies, they're great. It's like you're like method actors, every day is a new life you got to live, a new thing you got to learn about. And so I like that. And I was a bit thorn of leaving that behind to go to a place where I could at least explore what creativity could do for a brand a little bit more in a less formatted way. But then this year came along, we had a chat, and I thought they were great, and I think one of the great things with Handsome is with John and with Jennifer, they have the grown-up expertise, of a grown-up company, but it's still an independent company, and I think that shouldn't be overlooked. I think that is in these days as a creative company, that is a big asset, especially when you're going through a time of such immense change, like we're going right now. Having the independence, you'd be able to look at yourself and look at the business fundamentally, and do the changes you need to do because they're right and they fit on your plan for your company rather than the plan that the holding company has for how your company is going to fit on how they are changing. I think that's a huge asset, and so that attracted me. The conversation was early days. Honestly, I came in was with anyone that doesn't want to move to another agency. Go okay, I'll touch these people, but but they're brilliant right away. I think we connected. I had a few chats. They flew over to New York. We went to the one hotel. We sat somewhere in there. And funnily enough, I went. I matched the dates up, and then the first time we were going to meet in there, I went in a week earlier than the date we're supposed to meet. And dude, I'm sitting in there, and I'm like, where are these people? And then their name went out on the reservation. I was like, oh, this is massive, man. And I'm talking to the hostess, and she's trying to she was taking pity on me, when someone stood up for a date.
You thought they stood you up.
Yeah, and they're trying to make you feel better. It's kind of it was a funny thing. Turns out we figured out together which was not the best way to figure it out. She figured it out with me. That was a week earlier for the thing of the reservation for a week after that. And so they came over and we had a chat in that hotel on the rooftop, and it's kind of nice. It's kind of a meeting of minds, and I think different minds, but with similar sort of like goals and perspectives, which is great. Complementary skills, but sort of like similar dreams kind of thing. And I think we had a moment of sitting down and dreaming about the future together, and I thought that was great. I love how they're excited about the future and the new, and on figuring things out and doing things differently, and not to attach to what has been, and I think that was the fuel for a lot of those initial conversations, and that got me really excited again, and I went from, oh my God, I can't talk about agencies anymore, and I can't talk about assembling a team anymore and all that. We've done this so many times. This is the same thing over and over, and all of a sudden there was a fresh sort of like flavor to it, and I think that was that was great. At least personally, selfishly for me, that was quite exciting. I was like, oh, okay, I refound my enthusiasm for that kind of company, which I thought was super special.
I want to ask more about kind of you getting into this system. But before we do that, I think, Jennifer, I'd like you to explain a little bit about how the teams are structured there now. And with that, kind of how was that implemented, and how did the team members that were already at Handsome going through a change, how did that impact them, and were they receptive to it, or was there any resistance?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that, looping back into your earlier question about how long did it take me to, understand the structure and what we needed to do, I think I quickly, came to the, realization that we had the opportunity to make a ton of change. And so in order to do that successfully, whether we did that slowly or quickly, we needed to have a culture and a mindset of really embracing change itself. And so that was one of the first things that I did with John, was to figure out how we incorporate this embracing of change at all these different levels, right? So from your mundane day-to-day things all the way up to, your bigger like vision of the next year. How do we get everybody in the company really thinking about change and getting them excited about it? Because I think there was, as human beings, we're not very excited about change, to be honest. Like it is scary. It's much more comfortable, and we're much more geared towards, trying to find stability and safety and comfort. And so to try to get people to say, all right, a little bit of discomfort is great. You should be looking for it and wanting it. That was a big project that, was the first 6 months. And then, like I said, the pandemic allowed us to just accelerate change on top of that. So that was great. Structurally, I mean, it's still pretty loose. Like I said, we're bringing in people to say, hey, you're going to be a lead in your discipline, but we also want you to not stay in your lane, so to speak. We're bringing you in, individual, because you have more to bring than just your hard skills in a particular discipline, but you also have a greater person to bring, a greater passion, greater ability to think broadly and go deep on things. So the structure itself is very loose. Like I said, we have people who are leads in their disciplines and hard skills, but then the way that we assemble teams is per the project need. So you may be a lead in UX, but on a particular project, you may be playing a much more supporting role, just because the project itself is maybe more strategically led or maybe more visually design led. And so we take a lot of care in talking to people about that upfront in the recruiting process and finding those people who are excited to work that way and see the opportunity to work that way.
So You talked about, you spent 6 months kind of building this culture of change. And I think that's something that many of us in our businesses and even just in our lives, like always kind of need to work on embracing that. Do you have any, were there any workshops, any kind of tricks, or is this like, it's a long road and it's not like, oh, Abby, you just do this thing and everyone's like, I got it.
Yeah, no, it is a long road, and there's no simple, silver bullet there. It's really about how can we think about change in everything that we do. So, like, again, at every level, at the high level, at the low level, tactically, in fun events that we do together, in more serious things, in our client work, like really just trying to disseminate this idea of change, infuse it throughout everything that we do, as much as possible, because I knew that was going to be really important. So we had to just try everything to just bring that to be something that was top of mind, and just constantly talking about it, constantly. Every opportunity we had that we were speaking to the agency or speaking to individuals, we always talked about change and the importance of it and the excitement of it. At the same time, listening to people is really important. Just hearing them out. They're going to have anxiety. They're going to have fear. They're going to have questions. They're just going to not know a lot of things about what's going on. So really listening to them and hearing their concerns with change. A lot of people are worried that change means change that's not great. It doesn't mean that change is good. Sometimes change is not good. If the leadership is changing things in a way that isn't good for me, I'm not excited about that. So, creating that space for people to also, voice their anxieties and concerns about it, and then working with them from that place of saying, I hear you, and that's valid, and let's figure out how we can make sure that change is not the thing that's bad. It's going to be a change for good in how you work and how it impacts you personally.
So Pablo, you come into this kind of new, different structure for you, coming from the agency world, and it was, it's great to see. I can see you. The listeners can't, but the excitement of just something different, and not for the sake of it being different, because I think that is always a fear, that it's just like we're trying something different because that's what admin has to do to show our worth, but that there was value to this. So coming into this, what was that transition for you? And you're still going through it. What is it like to suddenly have a very different kind of work setting to be working in?
The places I've worked in the past are not very different from Hanson in many ways. I think don't want to talk too much about old jobs, but so the other places were shops that are doing the exact same work that Hanson does, and actually finding some people at Hanson that I worked with in the past, So I think that part of the job. I'll rewind 1 second, because I think what we're trying to do with Handsome, as John alluded to before, is going beyond just your traditional idea of what a design services shop is, and so I think that's where the real difference lies, is on what we're willing to explore and the areas we're looking to grow into, rather than the place where we are right now. I think the place where we are right now, we are a very good design shop, and which is not dissimilar to the place I worked before. So it's not, in many ways, the challenge. Some of the challenges are the same, that you find when you're taking your job, and you go, oh, okay, this is done this a couple of times, just gotta do it again, and it's every place is different, of course, but some of the challenges are similar. When you're trying to structure similar businesses that work in a very similar business model, of having great talent, engaging with clients on specific problems, and then applying the expertise of that talent plus some mildly different philosophies on how to solve those problems. So it's not that different. But I think there are many things at Hanson that are different in that space I quite like. When Jennifer spoke about it before, the sort of like trying to grow beyond geographic borders, which I quite like. I've worked in different parts of the world, and I quite enjoy sort of like, I think it's great for the work to have the most amount of different people from different walks of life involved in the work. So to John's point about a bubble and all that, I think, especially in the US, sometimes the US itself is kind of like, physically insulated from the rest of the world. You don't have many borders with different countries. You're a big internal market in itself, and sort of different from Europe, where countries got to collaborate to create a bigger economical market, and so having been in spaces where not just philosophically, but naturally have to be a little bit more sort of multicultural. You see the advantage of that, and I think I've heard a lot about that from John and from Jennifer at the start of our conversation. I thought that was great. I think embracing what the side effect of the pandemic, making everyone stay at home, and going, hey, look, there's an opportunity to rethink again to the credit. Or to John's and Jennifer's credit, you're embracing change. That's walking that walk. Where they're going, hey, look, this is different, but this could be great. And taking that as an opportunity to look at the business and radically shift the business. They closed the offices, and I thought that was great. And they went, hey, look, let's make this what they call an everywhere company, which I've adopted and I love, and so I think those things are the biggest kind of changes we're talking about, sort of coming in and working with them on these changes that they started, and I think was great, and seeing the opportunity of that. What does it look like when you think of the world as your talent pool, and you can get anyone from anywhere, and how that's great and that's just one aspect of all the other things, but sort of like that was what I'm super excited about, because I think that has a societal value, of opening the doors of our industry to people that wouldn't necessarily live on the coasts or in big cities and stuff, and allow for people to from different walks of life to more access to the industry. So I think the more companies do this, the more we're going to see our talent pool diversify, and the better our work will be, and so there's a great value for us and great societal value in doing that, I think. And so, and then the other challenges are just like the challenge that every company is different, People start companies, they do things the way they think is right, and they amalgamate opinions throughout their lives. And when they run companies, they go, okay, I believe this way rather than that way, and make choices. And so, there are some differences, but they're not complicated or anything that difficult to deal with. In many ways, I welcome that, because it would be very boring if you go from one job to the next job and the new job is just the same as the old job. That would be a very boring life. So I kind of like the idea that it is different. But they also done a great job. It's the company is great. It's people are super happy, which is great. We had a meeting at the end of the year, where I was like, still now I'm more involved. It's only been a little bit over a month, but they had a meeting. Well, we had a meeting. You see, it's like even the day but at that time it felt like a lot like Vegas. It was kind of like first week of the job, second week of the job, and there was a meeting with everyone, all hands, and so like everyone talking about what they were grateful for the year, and that was kind of nice, to see how people were sort of like, care for each other and appreciate each other and all that. And so I think that kind of stuff is one of the hardest things to get going in companies sometimes, a sense of a team that enjoy each other's companies and just like trust each other and all that. And I think they're able to build that, that's one of the hardest things to build. And everything becomes a lot easier when it's like that. Human beings are complicated, and companies can be complicated environments, sometimes, as we all know. And so I think they've done a good job on that. And so I don't know, it isn't a challenge, it's more, I don't see it as a big challenge. I see it more as like the cost of sounding really cheesy. I just see it as a really cool opportunity,
I see why they brought you on. Hearing what they're looking for and hearing you, it makes a lot of sense. So one thing I really want to talk a little about before we get going is, John, you mentioned this a little bit about changing kind of the type of work you're doing, and not because of you want to, but because there's this need, because as things are changing. And I don't know who wants to feel this, but what type of creative work are you hoping to be making in the future?
I think it would be interesting to hear all three perspectives on that.
All right, let's do it.
I think one of the things that I'm really excited about that's happening, and I think this is it's the culmination of a few different areas. It's a natural tendency for people. Technology is allowing it to happen more and more now, and businesses, I guess, are being forced to let it happen. And that's letting individuals, the everyday person, create things that the world can see. So create things, publish and distribute things, monetize their ideas and their skills and their time and their attention, and for everyone to participate at an individual level. And you could call it decentralizing. I think that's, those terms are being used in other areas of technology, but it's just this idea that every person can create things and every person can consume and enjoy things by everyone. And I think that's a space that I'm really excited to both help our big company clients participate in responsibly, and also excited for us to participate in. And so what that means for us is the change that you're talking about. What kind of company do we turn into? I think that the easiest way to say that is a company that creates our own things and puts them out in the world, whether it be a 15-second video or it be a physical product that ends up in everyone's home. It's everywhere in between. It's just the idea that we will be creating things from our own ideas with our ability to partner with anyone that we want to, while also helping our large company clients, traditional brands, participate in that new environment. And then other thing finally that it means is that we can, and this is where what Pablo was talking about and breaking down borders, and Jennifer was talking about, and evolving our model to work with independent and individual artists and creators and people that have any type of skill set that live anywhere in the world, and allow them to, through us, create things and put them out in the world, both for big brands, for themselves, and potentially as parts of smaller teams. And so that's the big idea, and that's really in that space. And what I just described is where things are headed for Handsome, and also because I think that that's where things are headed, and I hope things are headed in general for people.
Great. Jennifer, do you have your take on this question?
Sure. Mine is going to be kind of abstract and philosophical, but if you think about how technology, people create technology, and then the technologies impact people, and we don't talk so much about how those impacts are experienced or seen in society, but we change as human beings and as societies because of those technologies. And if you think about human-centered design as being a practice that has been around for 30 plus years, what is the next evolution of that, based on all of the technological and societal change that we're experiencing now and continue to experience at a really accelerated clip. So I don't have the answer for that yet, but something that I'm really interested in, seeing where we can take human-centered design into new areas because of technology and because of changes in people and behavior.
I love hearing you explain that. You're able to put in words something that I've thought a lot about. So thank you for doing that, and I hope you're able to do that for others too.
Cool, thank you.
Pablo, what about you?
I think creativity is just a wonderful thing, that's inherent to every sort of human being, and I think we're at an age now where it's because of the advances of technology and the interconnectedness of the world and the democratization of access to platforms of publishing and all that, we're seeing that being a tool that's being afforded to everyone. You look at TikTok and how a person at a small village somewhere in England can go and make a little video and take over the world, and I love that, sort of that the creativity in everyone is being awakened, and that creativity is kind of like taking a bigger role in the world and in conversations. A lot of people starting their own things, and be that movements or companies or little sort of ideas that they chase. I love that. I think part of the reason the world sometimes is a little weird because that power was in the hand of very few people. And where money was at and all that. I think technology, and we've been talking about that for so long, cameras are getting cheaper. Now everyone can make a video. Now a phone can do everything, and so I think it's important to acknowledge that and embrace that and try to somehow see how we can thrive in that world and how we can help companies thrive in that world, and in a way that it isn't predatory, in a way that is kind of, a win for everyone. I think that's one of the things behind Web3 that I'm excited about, is this conversation of that being reward for everyone, and that being a sense of ownership by everyone, and I love that. I think that was what the internet was about at the beginning of it, and we thought the internet was going to change the world, but the world changed the internet, and the internet became like a kind of like a high school version of the world. It's kind of weird, and I think now we're trying. I can see efforts and people and groups and stuff that are trying to course correct that, and I think that's great, and then in that space, creativity is a big thing, and so how do we as a company go and be a part of that, my greatest creative hero right now as everyone's, is the late Virgil Abloh, and so how he was able to just like push his creativity to a bunch of different places, and do a bunch of different things, and there are plenty of creators out there in the world, that are figuring out ways of doing that, and I think the idea now is how to look at a company that way and go, can a company be like that? Can a company be multifaceted like that and get involved in as many things as you can like that, and use your skills not for a very defined output, but sort of like letting your skills define the output as you go, and allow you to do different things in different unexpected ways. And I think that's the bit I'm excited about, and I think that's the stuff that we'd like to push Handsome into, is to try and do the client services thing, do it really, really well, but at the same time, gain a better understanding of what other things we can do in the company. And I think that would be for our benefit. And then talking about win-win-win, I think that'd be great for us. I think that's great for the world. If companies do more like that, I think that's great for the people that work with us. And that's also great for our clients, because the more we do that, the more we get better at doing other things, and we can help them do other things as well, and also embrace that world in different ways. So it's, trying to think of things that way, where everyone benefits, so.
I know I'm really excited to follow along and see all the amazing things that I know you all will be creating. So I'd like to now just thank you all for being here. This was an amazing conversation. And I'd encourage everyone to keep an eye out on Handsome. I know some changes are coming, but check out their work now, handsome.is, see what they've been doing, and keep on refreshing to see what's coming next.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Abby. Thanks for your time.
Thank you all so much for listening. We'd love to hear your feedback. Feel free to send us a message or leave us a review. To learn more about the show, check out our website at designtogetherpod.com. Special thanks to Rob Weston at Great Magnet Recording Concerns for providing our post-production.